So after all these years, I still get messages from people saying that I am either desperate for attention or that I'm planning on making a whole pile of money off of Nichole's story. And neither could be further from the truth. But what I do want people to understand is that I've been in situations where I've cried out for help and no one has come to help me, where I've been screaming and crying and screaming for help, and the police never show up because no one calls the police. I was with a guy about 20 years ago. This was when I lived in Russia. And one night and I don't even remember what we were arguing about or even if it was really that bad of an argument, but he got mad at me. He walked into the kitchen and within like 10 seconds, he hit me in the rib. He broke my rib. I couldn't breathe. When I complained about not being able to breathe, he got more angry with me. When I cried, he got more angry with me. And so the entire night after he broke my rib, I laid on a bed with him hitting me in the arms as hard as he could over and over again. The next day, my arms were so black and purple, I couldn't lift them over my head. I couldn't even get my own clothes on because my arms hurt so bad. I could barely breathe from my broken rib. He refused to let me go to a doctor. He said that I was lying about my rib being broken. He locked me in the apartment for about 3 days, wouldn't let me leave, had ripped the phone out of the wall. And I know the neighbors had to hear us fighting. Nobody called the police. And I knew that I was completely trapped. After that, he had taken my passport and my travel visa. I had no way to even prove my citizenship. I was basically trapped over there. He did a bunch of really awful things to me over the next couple years. You know, he would apologize and it would be great for months. But he would get mad about something and then the crazy abuse would start again. He would shove stuff in my mouth until I couldn't breathe. He would threaten to burn me with an iron or a curling iron. He would dump water over my head and then lock me outside on the balcony when it was like 30 below zero and wouldn't let me back in. And I would get so sick from stuff like that, and he didn't care. And the final straw was one night, again, we were arguing over something. I don't even remember what it was. But he sat on my chest, and all 185 pounds of him squeezing the air out of my lungs. He held my arms down with his knees. His left hand choked me, and his right hand held a pillow over my face. And I couldn't breathe, and I went into a panic, and I was kicking, and I was struggling, and I could not get away from him. And I don't know what got into his head. He just decided to stop. He just decided not to kill me that night. And unfortunately, Chris and Essie Breach didn't make that decision. They decided to go all the way. But see, I left him after that. And one night after work, he was waiting for me with his friend outside of my work. My work was about 50 feet away from the main police station in Moscow. And we were screaming in the middle of the street. We were screaming at each other. And he was with his friend who was FSB Alpha, which is like the kind of like the SWAT team equivalent of the KGB. He was armed, which, you know, you're not allowed to have a handgun in Russia. He was armed, and when the police came over to see, you know, what was going on, his friend showed him his ID, and the police walked away. And I knew if he wanted to shoot me that day, he could have just shot me. I think he intended to shoot me right there. in the middle of the road. But like 10 of my friends came running out from work and they stood around me and they convinced him to leave me alone. But I honestly thought that night and the night that he was choking me that I was going to die. And it's an awful feeling knowing that you can die. I mean, not knowing, this kind of general feeling that, yeah, you're going to die. But like at that moment, you're going to die because someone is killing you. And that has been a huge thing in my mind when it comes to Nichole. Like, I understand what it means when someone else wants to kill you, and how awful it must have been for her in those last moments